Should I put my volume on my ear speak through that?
I would just speak through.
Okay, okay. Can you guys hear me? Yeah, okay. Perfect. So we'll get started. This is NAR's best practices for choosing realtor champions. This is a course that they put together. Some of the information on here is a little bit old, but a lot of it will be more what we're doing and what the committee does. A lot of the things in this PowerPoint are already things that this committee is doing. So that's great. We are already, conducting candidate interviews, putting candidate questionnaires together, that kind of thing. But this just gives additional information and some things that we can consider as we move forward. And obviously we have local elections this year. We've got some important local elections, I think for the first time in a while, so it'll be good for us to get some information where they are and maybe think about some things as we're starting to talk candidates and interview candidates. So I'll start going through this. This is about 50 slides. I'm going to go through it as quick as I can. Again, a lot of it is stuff that we already know. So if there's a slide, we don't have to spend too much time on, we won't do that. So. A little bit of background on the Realtor Party. Obviously, those on this Zoom are familiar with, the quote unquote Realtor Party. So, we work every day to, promote home ownership, property rights. The Realtor Party, again, speaks as one voice to advance candidates in public policy to build strong communities and promote a vibrant business environment. Again, this course is just a way to help local associations continue that engagement. So a brief agenda for the day, there's 3 chapters that we'll go over, 4 chapters we'll go over. There's some exercises that they have here. We'll make anyone do that. Just, it'll be things to think about. Again, things that were, a lot of this is already things that we're doing, which is a really positive. Again, just some learning outcomes. Again, this is all stuff that, we've done and you guys are familiar with. So we'll move on from that one. So chapter 1, taking your association to the next level. This is something that we talk about a lot. Just a funny quote that NAR has here. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Essentially, we need to be the voice that's speaking for realtors, for property rights in the community. And this board, as long as I've been in NISAR, has always done that, has always been willing to engage. So that's really been a positive. This is one of the more active boards in terms of advocacy. So I appreciate that, and I know we do at NISAR as well. A couple of things to think about. The political action committees are no longer enough to influence public policy. As I mentioned, this is a little bit older. So Citizens United was a Supreme Court case that was adjudicated several years ago, which basically allowed for no limits on corporate donation to political candidates. McCutcheon versus the FEC, that allows for unlimited donations to candidate committees. So like the DCCC, the National Republican Campaign Committee, the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, all those candidate committees that exist to help Republicans and the Democrats get elected. There's no limits on the amount of money that you can give to those candidate committees. So that's certainly changed in the last 15 years. Independent expenditures are something that we engage in at NISAR frequently. There goes beyond the traditional candidate donations. So these are campaign efforts on behalf of candidates. We have the ability to do that locally as well. We do that at NISAR, every even year election, we do independent expenditures for state level candidates. And we've been, pretty successful in our efforts there to, most of the folks that we engage in IEs for, have been successful. So there's a big process that we go through to identify what races we're going to engage in, and there's a lot of factors that are with that as well. And I can touch on that if you guys have any questions. Grassroots member mobilization, things that we're already doing. in terms of engaging members. This course here is another example of that. And this board has always been willing to engage with the members, but also engage in the community. Yeah, political involvement, different reach association, all these things are things that we do already. So, we monitor the municipal meetings. The board has the ability to formally endorse candidates if it wants to. That is certainly your prerogative. You always have that right. RPAC contributions, we do that. Independent expenditures. In my time as an RSR, we haven't engaged in a local independent expenditure. Again, we do that at the state level, but independent expenditures are available. If there's a candidate that is above and beyond, is 100% on our issues, or maybe they're a strong ally of ours and they're facing a difficult challenge, independent expenditures are available for us to utilize. And then again, grassroots involvement, things that we're already doing right now. Successful political programs. So this is, again, a lot of what the Government Affairs Committee is already doing. You guys are familiar with this process. We create a candidate questionnaire in the even year elections when there's statewide, state Senate, state assembly races. NYSOR creates a questionnaire that we send out to all of those state candidates. A lot of you, I'm sure, have been on those meetings, those calls where we talked to Dan Stack, Matt Simpson. They filled out the questionnaires and got those back to us. Incumbent scorecard, something that we can look to do in the future. So if we want to put together a quick little one pager that we send out to our members, we can do that. It basically says if we have 4 or 5 pieces of legislation, we can say, Dan Stack supports X, Y, Z, that kind of thing. That's what an incumbent scorecard is. We haven't utilized that in the past. Doesn't even have to. The questionnaires and the interviews are a really good, way for our members to speak to those candidates, and we can always get that information out to the members if they want it. Identifying priorities and key races. Resources are finite, time, money, people. This board certainly has plenty of LRS money to engage in local campaigns if it wants to. We've got the ability to send our members to fundraisers. So that's definitely a benefit that we have for the members. Choosing races, again, the candidates that we support up here in the Southern Adirondack board are all pretty much going to win their races. We've got engaged in some local races in the past where it's been a little more competitive. That's a good thing. Certainly, it helps when our fundraising, our money is influencing candidates who are in tight races. Selection candidate, that's nothing to worry about. Early rankings can change based on filing. Something to remember for this year. So the primary is in June. So, we're going to have to, we've already talked about identifying some of the races we're going to engage in. And it sounds like the competitive part of those races is going to be in the primary, at least in the Glens Falls mayor's race. And we can identify other races as well as we go through the year. Another thing that I think it's important to mention, incumbents generally do win. I mean, that's the same for the federal level all the way down to the municipal level. NAR has the statistic here, 90% of incumbents that run for re-election win. Some things to think about, obviously going through this process. You support an incumbent because they will win, even though they are not great on realtor issues. Always something to consider. We always have the option of not engaging in a race to get out. That's certainly the prerogative of all the realtor boards to do. And something, I don't know if we've encountered this, but it is something that, could pop up if there's a realtor member or someone who's closely associated with, the real estate industry, if they're running for a race against an incumbent who is a big supporter of ours. So that's, a conversation that we could have if that, ever came to pass. But it is something to think about how we go about managing that that type of thing. So just something to keep in the back of our minds. Yeah, so this just is a little bit of, continuation of that last slide. Difficulties occur when members run against friendly incumbents. Formal process and policies help. So that process that we put in place, to get the candidate questionnaires out, have them interviewed, have a conversation with the committee, that goes a long way towards deciding who we're going to support, if we do want to support a certain person in a particular race. Resource allocation. So yeah, so we do have, this board is lucky that they have a solid amount of LRS funding, but that, it's not infinite. I mean, there are finite resources. I don't think we've ever been in a situation where we've run out of, funding to support a candidate if we want to, or go to an event that we want to. So not something I think we would encounter, but just something to keep in the back of our mind. So in deciding who we're going to support, obviously, it all needs to be based on issues, responses to questionnaires. We don't want to get into a position where folks are advocating for someone or so financially supporting someone just because they have a personal relationship with that person. Certainly that's beneficial when we do have those relationships, but that can't be, how we decide who gets funding. And we've done a good job in the past of ensuring candidates that we do support are those who are solid on our issues, that we've built relationships with, and that's the reason why we do support them. So just another thing that, again, we're already doing, but just, keeping the back of our mind. This is important too. A couple of years ago, we ran into a situation, some of you may remember, where we got a candidate questionnaire out to candidates too late. And essentially by the time we decided to support that candidate, provide them, a financial contribution, I think it was the Friday or Saturday before election day. So that, we did give those candidates checks and, obviously, ideally they would have been sent out and done at least a month prior to there. So I think we're in a good position now, for this year, but we just want to make sure that, and that's, obviously falls on me and the government to make sure that, these questionnaires get out in time, we have the interviews, we decide who we're going to support. NAR on here, puts 60 days as a good timeline prior to the election to get the contributions out. We want to make sure that the money that we're giving to candidates, or we decide to contribute to a candidate, that they're able to use and do something good with it for their campaign, not give them a check 4 days before the election. So I think we're in a much better place this time around. This is just a summary of the first chapter here. Again, this is a lot of stuff that we're already doing. I won't go through it again, but just things to keep in the back of your mind. So this is an exercise that they have. I won't make anyone do this, but some things to think about. Again, think about this as we're going through the presentation. So just to develop 2 or 3 goals you would like the selection committee to focus on when selecting candidates. Issues your association would like to influence, and what your association hopes to accomplish. Some of, and I will say this, a lot of the things we would ask local candidates, we probably, wouldn't ask state candidates in a questionnaire and vice versa. Some of the questions are going to be broad, what are your goals for developing more housing in the community? That's obviously something that we can ask a statewide candidate and a local candidate. But our local questionnaires, we want to make sure are sort of tailored to local issues and that these local officials are going to have influence over. So that's just something that, I think about when putting these questionnaires together. So chapter 2, finding realtor champions. We don't need to scream. I know Commissioner Jones, he is a good guy. So Candidate pre-screening, which is something that we're already doing. Political decisions should be fact-based, again, should be based on responses to questionnaires, issues that we care about. You know, we've had people at NYSAR reach out to us, asking us why we support a candidate because they're not good on abortion, let's say. That's not an issue that we as a realtor association care about. You know, we are specifically laser focused on housing related issues and realtor specific issues. So that is what we base our decisions off of. You know, if anyone has personal relationships with candidates, obviously we want to know that. If there are partisan relationships, we want to know that. And again, the formal screening is sort of a fact-based decision. So what is a realtor champion? There's no real one answer. Could be a sponsor of a key piece of legislation, could be someone who works behind the scenes on our behalf, even though, there's no actual vote taking place. Could be a freshman. This is more for members of Congress and the Senate. Freshman champion, a rising star, maybe more important than a powerful long-term incumbent who's only a friend. Sometimes each association must define. So that is obviously the decision of the board in terms of how we determine who is a quote-unquote realtor champion who we're going to support. Obviously comes back to, again, the questionnaires and the conversations that we have with these folks. So create questionnaires. This is obviously something that we're very familiar with, that NYSAR does, and I've created multiple questionnaires for local candidates. Identify where the candidate stands, questions related to the office sought. Again, like I mentioned, stick to core issues. We want to know how they feel and what their thoughts are on realtor specific housing related issues, property rights issues, things that are happening in the community. Short yes or no answers are always good. And obviously it's important to include a deadline to return the form, which is, what we always include on the questionnaires, and send to all registered candidates. So I want to make sure that the questionnaires get out to everyone, regardless of whether or not, we feel that maybe there's a candidate or two who are not quite serious candidates. I want to make sure that we're covering our bases and we get that out to everybody. We have an opportunity to respond. Another, things to include, to consider including on questionnaires: why are you running for office? That's always a good question to ask. How will you win? We haven't included questions like this on questionnaires. It may be something you can have a conversation as a committee, whether or not you want to do that. How much money have you raised, and for how many donors? How many doors have you knocked or planning to knock? These are questions that really get at the legitimacy of these campaigns. If you see that someone's raised a lot of money, obviously they're a serious candidate. If they've raised $100, they may not be as serious. So it's good to know that type of thing. Check with your legal counsel to ensure that any question you ask does not stop your ability to do independent expenditure. That's not something we need to worry about. If we ever decide to do independent expenditure, we can, have that conversation at the time. Candidate evaluation, develop a ranking system, weighted questions and answers, key issues take priority, tally and rank candidates for interviews, all things that we've done in the past. Questionnaires exist the interview committee in making decisions. So essentially the interview committee in this, in our role is the government affairs committee, the ones who are screening these candidates. Include 5 to 7 policy issues, 5 to 7 campaign specific questions, should be yes or no, or short answer questions, consider creating a scorecard. So what we've done in the past is, we ask the questions, yes or no question, and then we leave some space for candidates to expound on those, yes or no's. If they don't provide a ton of information, that's where the interviews come in, where we can, ask them about it. If there's something that we're curious about that maybe they didn't respond to in depth, the interviews are when we can really drill down on those things. Create a candidate questionnaire. Again, we're not gonna do this, but myself in conjunction with Mike as the chair of the government affairs committee and the government affairs committee itself, we'll go through a process where we decide, hey, what are the questions, what are the issues in, let's say, the city of Glens Falls that we want to ask the candidates about? We'll we'll put those questionnaires together. There'll be some general questions on just housing and, property rights issues. But we want to make sure that we have some questions in there that are specific to what's going on in Glens Falls. So we will endeavor to do that at the Government Affairs Committee. All right, chapter 3, candidate interviews. Again, we've all done this before. We've, thankfully we have good relationships with the candidates up here in, Warren and Washington County, and they've all been, receptive and wanting to come talk to us. So that's always been good. Association should ask every candidate, why are you running for office? The basic number one question that every political candidate should be able to answer. Interview committee, which in this case is the Government Affairs Committee, established before the candidate filing period. Obviously, we have, a committee, the Government Affairs Committee that's already established. Between 5 to 7 people, that's right around where we're at. Our PAC trustees, Government Affairs, staff plays a crucial role, myself, in conducting this process. Determine who has the final vote. This committee or the board of directors, I know, I'm pretty sure, in this case, the board of directors who have the final say, in what we end up doing, but the Government Affairs Committee plays a crucial role in that. As always, committee members just disclose personal relationships with candidates, refusal policy, conflict of interest, confidentiality. You guys are all familiar with that. As I mentioned, the interview is the opportunity for a deeper dive. So when we've had, candidates in here in the past, Dan Stack, Matt Simpson, obviously we get their responses to the questionnaire, so we know how they feel. But if there are maybe points that we want to bring up or other things maybe outside of that, that's the opportunity for us to have that conversation with them. It's an opportunity for a deeper dive, what candidate stands for and why. The key obviously is listening. I tell that to my 19-month-old son a lot. Ask open-ended questions. Those of you who have been part of those interviews, I think they've been really instructive. And Senator Stack has always been a champion of ours, and Assemblyman Simpson as well. And we've had great conversations with them, and I envision that will continue in the future. They're obviously not running this year, but next year certainly we will have those conversations again. Hopefully we'll be able to bring in some of our local candidates to have these conversations as well this year. Key campaign plan elements, things to think about with candidates who are running. This is on paper. I'm not sure what that means. Targeting, who are they targeting? Who are they talking to? What type of campaign activities they're doing? What's their fundraising look like? Again, we have access to that information. It's all publicly available, but want to make sure that, again, if they're raising a good amount of money, they're a serious candidate. Door knocking plan, again, that goes to targeting kind of what your field operations are. Timeline and budget are just things to consider for these folks. Candidate evaluation. So create a simple grading system for candidate questionnaire. So something we could, the committee wants to do this year is to provide, we can put together a one-page document, let's say the interview, the candidates for Glens Falls mayor. We want to make sure that the committee knows that the board, the members of the association know that we've met with these candidates. Here are their positions on X, Y, and Z. Support, it could be simple as support, Y, oppose, no, that kind of thing. And we can do that to get that information out to, to the members. And obviously, on the subjective side, the candidate interviews, we're going to get, a lot more from those interviews than we do from a questionnaire or a simple, grading system. This is the final exercise. Again, we've all done this before. We've all been in these meetings with candidates, so we know how these go. And, you guys have always been interested in asking questions and, following up on responses to questionnaires. So I have no doubt that will continue in the future. So we don't have to do this mock interview. It's all something that we've already done, but I hope that you guys see the benefit of bringing these folks in. And to Mike's point, it's always, like he said, always an additional way for us to show our value as the local association and what we're doing in the community and how we are the, the group here locally that is, the champion for property rights and real estate and homeownership. And the more we can do that, the more we can show to elected officials, policymakers that, we are engaged in this. I think the better off we are, our relationships strengthen and, it just benefits us in the future. Decision time, committee should discuss after each interview. We always do that. We sit down and we have a conversation after the fact. The things that we've talked about, what's important, that kind of thing. So we're all good there. We all know this, obviously. What can we do? So we meet with the candidate, we meet with two candidates, we want to make a decision. We always have the option of doing nothing. There's the option of doing, requesting an RCAP contribution for that candidate, which we've done numerous times in the past. We have the option again to do an independent expenditure if there's someone who just blows us out of the water, or maybe they're champion, a realtor champion, but they're in a very tough race. So an independent expenditure goes beyond the traditional RPAC contribution, direct mail, give me any combination of direct mail, phone calls, digital ads, radio, newspaper. We can even send folks out to do campaign activities if we want to. And that's all managed through NAR. We put the request in and they help us put that together. Yes.
On a clarification on the IE.
Yes.
Does the candidate know about the IE, or must they be in the blind?
It's a great question. So the candidates cannot know. So if we ever do decide to do an independent expenditure, there could be no coordination between this, essentially the board, NISAR, NAR, and that candidate. That is against the law. So it's a great question. So we would have to be sure that there be no conversation. Once the mail, obviously, once this stuff goes out, then they're obviously going to be aware of it. But in the time between deciding to do a IE, putting all the campaign pieces together, there can be no communication.
No collusion.
No, none. It's a great question. And this just gets it is exactly what Mike had just asked. So again, independent expenditure. When it communicates to general membership, that will be after the fact, after the pieces go out. Most states coordination is not allowed. IE committee members need to sign a confidentiality agreement. Important to mention with independent expenditure, they are always positive. There's no negative ads. We don't do negative ads when we do independent expenditures. It's all positive. It's always vote for candidate X because of whatever. So no negative. I think some folks maybe get a little concerned if we do an independent expenditure that it's going to be negative. It's not, never is. Again, we've had to deal with it here, but when we do independent expenditures at NISAR from statewide candidates, you can bet we get comments and criticisms from members. It just comes with it. We explain to them that, we had a process that we went through, and the folks that we're engaging with are realtor champions. So what we do at NISAR, and if we ever decide to do this here, we could, put something similar together. We essentially our leadership team and Mike, our government affairs director, and a couple other folks are the independent expenditure committee. They decide what we're going to do, where we're going to engage. That's all the folks who know about it until the pieces go out. Reasons to do an IE. Again, make sure our realtor champions win. Show those champions that we are there for them. Flex the power of realtors, win or lose. We still have to be accounted for. Again, there's varying reasons why we would do this. But it essentially comes down to, do we have a champion who we want to essentially show that we really support them? Is there someone running in the tough race that we know is an ally of ours and we want them to win? And again, it's another way for us to show our engagement in the community and flex the power and the financial, power that we have as well. Formal IE process, again, create a formal process, application form, IE committee authority, presentation of request. Member mobilization, something, that is available, obviously, if you want to do door to door, most effective order contact. Realtor phone banks, we could always do that if we wanted to, if there's someone that is just an incredible, member of ours or elected official, we certainly could do that as well. All right, so the summary on chapter 3, interview committees, again, this is all information that we all know, 5 to 7 members. Committee should include architect, trustees, and government affairs committee, interview candidates and key races who support the real estate industry. Again, interviews are opportunities to go deeper into issues and get a better feel for the candidate, ask open-ended questions and allow candidates to do most of the talking. The key to a good interview is to listen. These are all things that we've done before, and you all know this. So we're doing a great job on this. Just quickly, this is the last part of this presentation. So the NAR, our federal process. NAR, you all know the 3-way agreements of local, state, and federal. Support is mutual, NAR and candidates. This is important here to just mention. RPAC's policy is to support incumbents who have been supported with real estate and NAR. So traditionally at the federal level, Indense is our NAR political representative for New York, and he was just at the winter business meetings. He gave us an update on our federal efforts. So NAR, by and large, supports incumbents. Again, as I mentioned earlier, they're more than likely to win. And if a situation arises, and it always does, if NAR supports an incumbent candidate, that incumbent candidate loses, then the work begins to then build a relationship with that new candidate. And we do it all the time. And, it's part of the process. NAR candidate support through direct contributions, similar, obviously what we're doing here. Candidates must meet extensive criteria. Again, it's all essentially the same in terms of how we decide who we're going to support. At the federal level, a lot of the candidates who serve on key House committees and have been supportive of NAR. Candidate does not serve on a key committee, but supports NAR. Candidate not in the key committee and not supportive of NAR. So that third candidate is probably not going to get the lion's share of support. The other two certainly would be candidates for financial support. Types of candidates: incumbents, realtors as challengers, open seats. Politicians never forget. That's true. Politicians remember who supported them in their first race. Be thoughtful with decisions. This is obviously things that we're already thinking about. While a good relationship with the candidate is important, the decision must be based on an objective evaluation of the candidate's past actions as well as their stated positions on federal housing issues. This is obviously geared towards members of Congress and members of the Senate, but still good information for us to think about as well when we're interviewing candidates. Opportunity races, these are things that NAR does to support, to go above and beyond, supporting realtor champions, a level 1. These are all campaigns that go directly to realtors themselves. So NAR will send out advertising, mailers to realtors in these members of Congress's districts. Level 1 is the highest, that's the most engagement, and then 2 and 3 obviously is less than that. We had a couple of opportunity races in New York this past cycle, a couple on Long Island, Andrew Garbarino. I know for a fact was an opportunity race. I believe Mike Lawler in the Hudson Valley was as well. New York had a lot of competitive congressional races last year, and they're going to again. We're going to again in 2026. Independent expenditures. I'm not going to, beat a dead horse here. You guys, have heard this. Again, certainly something to look at if we want to do in the future. That's it. Any questions from anybody? I know this is a lot of familiar topics, things that we do already. If anyone wants me to share this PowerPoint with them, I'm happy to do that. It's a little bit dated. I think this was put together in 2019, but a lot of the information is still relevant now. So Yes, Mike.
All right, I think the big takeaway for me was, something that we haven't done before is candidate scorecard. It's a nice idea where we have sufficient numbers of candidates to score. If it's only one or two, it's easier just to do a direct comparison.
Yes.
Or a determination that they are a realtor champion based on their answers. But where we find, those tricky questions of a realtor member running, or in a field where there's three or more, we may want to, for that greater purpose of building the relationship with the candidate who is successful, becomes an incumbent, we need to make sure that they recognize that, and remember that we were there at the beginning. So I think the scorecard may be something that we keep it in the forefront of our thoughts. So we can say, all right, if they qualify as a realtor champion, then maybe we can consider making an RPAC donation to them. And then in that way, we may have a race with two or more candidates who are realtor certified, for lack of a better term. In that way, it's expressing the values that we are putting forward in these questions and making these determinations. So there, I think we would have to develop a scoring system and a scorecard to say, yes, they qualify and they deserve, but with that greater purpose in mind of keeping the relationship going. And I hope that we have more candidates where this becomes an issue for the future, but it's something that, as you mentioned, I thought during the presentation would be something for us to have as a great takeaway for 2025 and beyond.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great idea. You know, when I talked with NAR about doing this, they sent a bunch of information, and one of the things they sent is examples of scorecards and things that we can do. So we have it, and we can kind of use it as a template, in the future. So I think it's a great idea, to quickly look at, you know, candidate X and, you know, because we have, for instance, at the state level, we've had issues that, you know, have been, you know, several years where they've been topics of discussion. So to have like, okay, like, good cause eviction, no. So we know where he's at. But that's an issue that, you know, it's more than just 1 year, you know, for multiple, you know. So it's good for, what I'm trying to say is, it's good for more than just 1 year. It's good to know sort of, okay, let's say the current incumbent mayor of Glens Falls supports whatever. Put that on the scorecard, we'll know in the future, where they're at. But yeah, we can definitely put that together. It's simple, it's easy to do, and they've provided us template for it. So we have that.
Now, having come from the winter meetings, can you give us a report on the legislative priorities for the new year?
I sure can. So this is the last time I think I met with you guys, or, you know, or if you were up at the winter business meetings, you probably got, you know, this presentation a bunch of times. So the governor delivered her State of the State address and her budget address a few weeks after that. There wasn't as housing focused as it was in the past. So she seeking to provide $50 million for first-time home buyer assistance. She wants to, something she's looking at is putting a 75-day waiting period in place for institutional investors who are looking to purchase homes in New York. So think private equity, Goldman Sachs. With the idea behind, these companies are seeking to buy homes and then, you know, selling them, or not selling them, renting them out for a high, you know, for a high rent, let's say, to essentially make a profit. But what's happening is taking those homes off the market for potential first-time home buyers, potential people who are looking to buy these homes. So we haven't, to my knowledge, and obviously we were asking folks at the meetings, if people are seeing this here in New York. The feedback we got was not really. And again, if there's anyone on this call who's seen that, certainly let me know. But it is happening in places, I know down south it was brought up in Atlanta, it's happening a lot, so I think it's just a way for the governor to, get out in front of something that may become an issue. But we need to see the details on that first. They're going through the budget negotiations now. Another thing that she mentioned, which we're obviously in support of, but we need more details on, is eliminating bias in the appraisal process. So we talked about that at the business meetings. We're still, again, waiting for more details to come from her. Something else that happened while we were at the meeting, so NYSAR has been supportive of a first-time home buyer bill for several years. Those of you on this call may remember several years ago, Benny Little got a similar bill passed the Senate, passed the Assembly. Governor Cuomo signed it into law, but he included a chapter amendment, which is basically instructions on changes to the bill that he wanted. He wanted the state to do a fiscal study on the bill. That study came back that it was going to cost the state money to do. So we didn't end up moving forward with it. Fast forward to this year, that bill in the Senate was passed by Senator Jeremy Cooney from Rochester while we were at the business meeting, so that's a positive. And we're hopeful that that bill will get passed by the Assembly and signed by the governor this year. That was a positive thing. We're also tracking the state fire, the Buildings and Fire Council is once again looking at a fire sprinkler mandate that they're looking to impose on all new construction, single family homes, which would cost anywhere from $15,000 to $30,000 to install, and that cost would just be pushed on to the buyer of the property. Currently, right now, it's a choice whether or not folks want to have sprinklers installed into their their homes. As of now, the data that we've got, not a single person who has purchased a newly constructed home has ever one time asked for these fire sprinkler systems to be installed in their homes. The council has had two separate meetings since December that they were supposed to meet and discuss this. Both of those meetings have been postponed because they're getting a lot of pushback and a lot of feedback from organizations like ours. Habitat for Humanity is also been opposed to this type of thing. And I think the governor is aware that this would have a negative impact on home buyers in New York. We're already in the midst of a housing crisis, and add, you guys know this, add $30,000 in additional cost would just be prohibitive for folks. So we, we certainly support, safety and that kind of thing, but we just want to make sure that it remains a consumer choice like it is now. What else? Lobby Day is gonna be April 29th this year, so we want to mark the calendars for that. Folks are interested in coming to that. Well, so we continue to monitor the cost of eviction proposals. Thankfully, up here and more in Washington County hasn't really been an issue yet. Down in Hudson Valley, it's a major issue with communities looking to enact good cause eviction. Yeah, and that's really it. What else should I talk about here? Yeah, it's really it. Again, so the legislature is addressed in terms of, so you guys are aware, so the governor released her statement. Now, first, the 2 days after the legislature opened, that was Governor delivers her state of the state. Then about a week later, there's her budget proposal. And then from now until, April 1st, which is the deadline for the budget, the legislature, conducts budget hearings, budget negotiations, and that's really the focus right now. So the Senate will put out their one house budget proposal, which is their priorities. The Assembly will put out their one house budget proposal. And then all three branches, the governor, the legislature, the Senate and the Assembly will get together and, get down to one document. So we're in the beginning of that. The legislature is conducting budget hearings. you know, they have been for the last couple of weeks and they will be doing that moving forward. So,
Yeah, thank you, Connor. I appreciate that
Yeah.
update and great presentation.
yeah, thank you.
Anybody who wants to hang on to continue with the Government Affairs Committee meeting for today, we'll pivot into that next. You're all welcome to join us.